Europe, the continent everyone loves traveling to and one of the easiest to get around because of how connected it is. And you don't even need a passport when you're traveling between many of the countries. Europe has stunning beaches, beautiful mountains, and some of the most beautiful cities in the world. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to plan the best Euro trip. I'll also share my custom itineraries and some of the best money-saving techniques you can only find in Europe. So stay tuned because at the end of this video, you'll be confident that you can get the most out of your Euro trip. I'm going to start the video off with all the tips you need to know before visiting the continent if you don't have an EU passport. As of now, this is something that keeps getting delayed. It was supposed to go into effect in 2024 and also 2025, and now it's saying that it's going to go into effect in late 2026. This is known as ETIAS, which is an electronic visa that you're going to need to get into the EU countries. And everything we know so far is that if you don't have an EU passport, you're going to need one of these to get into the EU countries. It costs €7 and is going to be valid for 3 years. I'll leave a list of the EU countries in the description so you can check if the country you're going to is in the EU or not. Common ones, UK and Switzerland, are not in the EU. Another thing that's helpful to note, especially before ETIAS goes into effect, is that you can stay in EU countries for 90 days in a 180-day span. So if you're planning to go to Europe for 180 days, make sure you're in EU countries for 90 days and non-EU countries for the other 90 days to avoid having to purchase a visa. Now the first thing you'll need to do is secure a flight. There's two options that are the most popular for getting flights. The first one is Skyscanner and the second one is Google Flights. And both have their pros and cons, but it can also just be a personal preference. If you have exact dates, I find that Google Flights is the better search engine to do this because it shows you the flights to each country in one window. So you can just look at it on a map view and you'll see the prices for each flight for your exact dates. Where Skyscanner just shows a few countries, but it doesn't show all of them. So if you have exact dates, I definitely recommend using Google Flights. If you don't have dates, then Skyscanner is good, so you can figure out which exact dates will be best for you. For the exact deals, Skyscanner will show you the best deals for a month period that you're choosing. So likely if you're flying from North or South America, the cheapest cities to fly into are going to be cities like London, Paris, Amsterdam, Lisbon, Barcelona. So expect your Euro trip to start in one of those if you're flying from those continents. If you're flying from Asia or Australia, the cheapest flights will likely be into cities like Istanbul, Athens, Warsaw, Prague, Vienna, Berlin. So expect to start your trip in one of those cities. Flights to London are usually cheap from both sides because that's a major hub, and same thing with Istanbul, I'd say. Also, just a quick tip to note while booking flights is to use incognito or a private browser because it's said to track your cookies less. I'm not sure if this is actually true, but it's a common practice, so I would suggest doing it. It might help, I don't know. Once you've secured a flight, you'll need to choose the cities you're going to and the places to stay in that city. I'll have custom itineraries at the end of this video, so for now, I'll just talk about finding your places to stay. Just like for flights, for places to stay, there's usually two search engines that I use that are the best when looking for places. The first one is Airbnb and the second one is Hostel World. Now quickly, if you don't like hostels, most of them also have private room options that you can book, but they also have events and more of a local feel to them. So if you're looking for a hotel room style, I would suggest looking into a hostel and getting a private room because you just get to meet more people and try all the other events that hostels offer while having your own private room. The next thing you need to do is identify what's most important to you. The two main things people care about the most is price and location. For me, location is the most important because it saves me a lot of time when I'm in the city to be centralized so that I have a lot of time to just explore and I'm not taking all the time to get to the location that I need to get to. Spots to stay in the best location are usually a little bit more expensive, but while you do save in having a place that's further away, you're going to be spending a lot more money to get into the city and it's going to be more expensive, especially depending on the mode of transport you're going to need to take in that city. And you're just also wasting a lot more time, and time is very valuable, especially when you're on vacation. Also, choosing the type of place you want to stay can also depend on the city, whereas when you're in like Barcelona, you're much more likely to want a hostel so you can meet people, party with them, whereas if you're staying in a place like Bled, you might want an Airbnb to have your own kitchen kitchen and it'll be a bit more chill. But I'll go over the pros and cons of each one so you know which place you would rather stay in. When booking an Airbnb, you'll have much more of a local experience since you are staying in a more local home. And if you want more of the vibe of like you're inside a home, then definitely Airbnb is the way to go. Also, if you do want to cook your own meals, then getting an Airbnb, it's much more likely to have a kitchen than you would in a hostel. Another plus about having an Airbnb is you're more likely to have your own space. There are some Airbnbs that it's shared with a host or shared with some other guests, but you can see that all through the app. The downside of Airbnb is that it's usually a lot more expensive than staying in a hostel. Also, popular cities like Barcelona, Amsterdam, and Rome are heavily taxed or restricted. So hotels or hostels are going to be much cheaper in those locations than Airbnbs would be. Now let's talk about hostel world. When staying in a hostel, you're more likely to meet new people. So if you're alone and you want some friends to travel with, hostels are a good way to meet people and just have fun with them in the city that you're in. They also have a lot of organized events like walking tours, pub crawls, and they're usually really cheap or even free. They're also going to offer you a lot of local tips on the city because they live there, and they'll let you know a lot about the hidden gems, restaurants, and attractions as well. They also usually have food or drinks there that you can buy, so you won't need to go anywhere to get your food if you just want a quick bite. And hostels are usually the cheaper options. In terms of cons, you don't really have your own space. It's just a bed that you get in a room with a bunch of people. So you can't really leave your stuff out or have it. You always need to lock it, keep it safe, and you're definitely just living out of your backpack. Your sleeping schedule also relies on other people a little bit. If you're not a deep sleeper or you're a pretty light sleeper, then you're going to get woken up a lot, people coming in and out of the room. So if you want to get a good night's sleep, you're much less likely to get that in a hostel as opposed to an Airbnb. And we kind of have a story like this in London where it was our first night. We just landed and about a group of like 8 Irish guys come into the room at 2 or 3 a.m. They're so loud, wake everyone up in the room, and then they need to leave at like 6 a.m. to get on their flight. So we basically didn't get any sleep at all that night. Now that you know a bit about the pros and cons of both hostels and Airbnbs, you can make a decision for yourself on which one you prefer based on the cities that you're going to be going to. Also, a pro tip is that Hostel World or Airbnb won't actually be the cheapest website for booking your accommodation. So once you find the spot that's the cheapest one that you want to go with, I recommend using the hotels or accommodations website and booking directly through them, as they're usually going to be cheaper than booking through Airbnb or Hostel World since it has the fees. For getting around Europe, there's so many options. Let's talk about flights first. It's usually cheaper to fly than to travel by train, and flying is also the fastest way to get through longer distances within the continent. If you're traveling to places that are further apart, flying will definitely be the fastest way and is probably the cheapest option as well. What's annoying for flights is that you'll usually have to pay for your carry-on since it's going to be through a budget airline. But even if that price with the carry-on is cheaper than flying by train, you're also going to need to limit your liquids to 100 milliliters and just follow all the precautions of stuff that's not allowed on planes that would be allowed on a train. Also, there's additional time needed to go to the airport because you need to get there earlier than your flight to do all the security check-ins, and landing and getting out of the plane, which is completely different than getting on a train or bus because you'll only need to arrive like 5 or 10 minutes early for those. Also, airports are pretty far from the city center, which just makes it more expensive and longer to get to than the train or bus stations, which are usually just right in the city center. Ultimately, flights are better for longer distances, but in terms of convenience, trains or buses are going to be better if you're doing a shorter distance. Trains are definitely my favorite mode of transport around Europe. The network is massive and so well connected. What's great is that the stations are always in the city center, so it's not going to be difficult to find a way to get there. Also, you can bring water onto a train unlike a plane, so you don't need to worry about if the airport actually has a water bottle filling station there to fill up on your water or pay the expensive prices for water that are at the airport. Also, there's overnight options for longer distances, and most of the really popular long distance routes all have overnight options as well. The biggest downside for trains is that they're usually the most expensive. So while it's the most convenient mode of transport, It's also the most expensive usually. There are ways to save money, and that could be with a Eurail pass, although most of the time it's actually more expensive using one of those. And there's a lot of planning you need to do to actually check the Eurail pass to make sure that you have the cheapest rate. I have a whole video breaking down the pass and figuring out how to get the cheapest pass and if it's actually cheaper than just booking individual train tickets. So check that out after you finish this video, because it's another great way for you to save money while in Europe. But for the cheapest way to get around, that's going to be by bus. While buses are the cheapest way to get around, they're always going to take the longest as well. So it depends what matters to you more, saving some extra money or having less time in a destination. Also, sometimes when you bring a bag, this is more true in Eastern Europe, I'd say, you usually get charged like 1 or 2 euros to put your bag under the bus in the storage area. There's also a lot of overnight options for buses as well. The good thing about buses is that you can get anywhere you want with a bus, because if a train can't take you somewhere, a bus likely can. But buses can't take you everywhere. So if there's a city that you can't get by plane, train, or bus, then you're likely going to have to get a car. For buses, the most popular option is Flixbus, so I would check on their website first because they have the most routes. There's many ways to take a car. You can either rent a car or use a car share service like BlaBlaCar or get an Uber or taxi. Renting a car usually isn't a good option in Western Europe because the network for trains and buses is really good there and it's just a lot more expensive, whereas in Eastern Europe the network isn't as extensive and car rentals are usually cheaper there as well. You're also going to need a car if you're going to places that aren't easily accessible by train or bus. It just depends on what you want to see, because if there's no other way of getting there, then having a car would be the only option. One big reason why I would recommend not getting a car in Europe is because gas is really expensive there. So you're going to end up spending a lot more money on the gas as well. Also, if you don't know how to drive a manual, you're likely going to spend more as well, because manuals are much cheaper to rent in Europe and they're much more common to drive as well than an automatic. Rideshare isn't too bad and it's pretty popular here as well. A lot of people drive to work from one city to another, and they'll usually take people with them on their commute just to make some extra money. We actually did this from Malaga to La Linea in Spain because we wanted to go to Gibraltar, and it was a pretty solid option. I have no complaints about it, so if there's no good way to get from one city to another, a rideshare service would be pretty good. The last option that exists is using a ferry. This obviously only works if you're going to 2 cities that are on water, but it usually takes a long time and it's the most expensive option almost always. The only reason that I would really recommend doing this is if you're going to an island and it's the only way to get there, or for just a really cool experience. Another major expense you're going to have is food. There's a few ways you can get food. Let's start with the most expensive, which is going to be restaurants. Restaurants are always going to be the most expensive option because you're paying for food and service. Sometimes there's something you'd really want to try in a certain city or country that you can only get at a restaurant. So that's the best time to go to some restaurants. I actually try local food in every country I've been to in Europe because I love getting to know new cultures by the food as well. So in all my Euro vlogs, I'm finding the cheapest restaurants to get the best meal that's local to the city. So check out those vlogs to see all of that. The cheaper option to get ready food though is by getting some street food. All European cities have a bunch of spots that just sell a quick bite or meal scattered across the cities. This is usually the best way to get some cheap food and try the local cuisine as well. This way you don't spend too much time eating and you just have a quick bite before heading to your next location. And lastly, the cheapest way to get food is going to be at a grocery store. They usually have ready meals available that are easy to eat, usually like a sandwich or a mini meal with a protein, some veg, and these are going to be the cheapest meals that are ready made for you. Obviously, if you have a kitchen and some time, the cheapest option is definitely going to be getting some groceries and just cooking everything yourself. But if you don't have that time or no kitchen, then ready meals from a grocery store are going to be the cheapest option. Another quick tip I thought that would be good to share is that many bakeries drop prices close to closing time. So if you're going about 30 minutes before they close, you can get some things for like half off since they would be throwing them out anyways. Now let's move on to some custom itineraries that are the best for different scenarios, starting with a 2-week trip that's a Euro starter pack for people visiting Europe for the first time. I would start off with 3 days in London, the capital of the UK, followed by 3 days in the capital of France in Paris, and after that the capital of Netherlands as well, Amsterdam, for 2 days. Then heading to the south of France to see the beautiful scenery there, spending 2 days in Nice, 1 in Marseille, and ending it off with 3 days in Barcelona. Now here's a 1-month starter pack pack for your first trip to Europe. Start it off with 3 days in London, followed by 3 days in Paris. Give yourself a day in Brussels and then 2 days in Amsterdam again. And after that, head to Berlin for 2 nights and then Prague for 2 as well. And then heading down to Bled just for the day and then spending another day in Venice in Italy before heading to Rome for 3 days and then spending 3 days on the Amalfi Coast. After that, head west to Barcelona for 3 days and then spend 3 days in Lagos, Portugal, and ended off with 3 days in Lisbon. Those are the most popular places, and I'm not really including Eastern Europe because most of those countries are not EU, so you're going to need a passport to get around, and it's just a bit more hassle at the border, so it's easier to travel around those Western European countries. And they're also the most popular sites for first-time visitors who usually want to see that part of the continent. But for those that are more interested for a 2-week itinerary, doing a more local trip, here it is. Start it off with 2 days in Samil, Albania, and then head to Shkodër for 3 days to do the popular Theth Valbona hike, and then make your way to Budva and Kotor for 2 days, and after that spend 2 days in Dubrovnik with a quick 1-day stop in Mostar, and then head north to Bled and finish it off with 2 days in Budapest. And now let's just get into some random tips that are going to be really helpful when planning your Euro trip. There's so many discounts for people under 25 and people who have an EU passport under the age of 27. Students usually get a discount as well, as long as you have your student card with you. Kids in general get free entrance to almost everything, and that's usually if they're under 12, but a lot of places do under 18 as well. There's also a lot of attractions that have days where things will be half off or free, so I would look those up and try to take advantage of them as much as possible. The UK has free museums in general, so that's a great thing to take advantage of. City passes are a great option if you plan on doing a lot of sightseeing at popular tourist sites in major cities. They usually also allow you to use the transit for free with the pass, so I would check those out too to see if they're worth it for you. Something I always do and always recommend for people to do is downloading offline maps. Google Maps has an option to download the map to have it offline, and if anything happens or even if your data just isn't working well, you can always navigate around the city with having those offline maps. Just something to mention is that not every country uses euro or even accepts euros. So check the country you're going to before to see what currency they use. If they do accept euros, they usually accept them but offer it at a higher rate if that's not the local currency in the country. And just because a country is in the EU doesn't mean they use euros. A country like Poland is in the EU, but they barely use euros anywhere. They use Polish zloty, and they don't really accept euros in all places as well. They'll take them, but they'll upcharge you. And a country like Montenegro is not in the EU, but they use euros. So you'll need to double check that before every country you're going to. When using public transport, make sure you're validating tickets before you get on. In many cities, you get a ticket and validate it before you get on. And if you don't, you're going to need to pay a fine. Keep in mind too that if you're going on a longer trip, I'd say every 7 to 10 days, have a place with a laundry machine so you can do your laundry. And don't expect there to be dryers as well. You'll probably need to air dry all your clothes. Keep in mind to just check the plug you need. It's not the same everywhere around the world. So if it's your first trip, make sure you have a Europe plug, and just keep in mind UK has a different one as well. If you have any other tips you'd love to share with the community, please feel free to write a comment in the comment box below, and I would love to hear those tips as well. I hope you enjoyed these tips, and if you did, please leave a like on the video because it really helps me out and it's free. Please subscribe if you want to see more content, and I hope this helped you prepare for your Euro trip. And I'll see you again in the next one.